Hey, everybody. I'm back. Nevin Gusak, host of The Populist Patriot, doing a little bit of a marathon of live streams here. And unfortunately, it's been raining. So um, I really wanted to do stand-up paddleboarding, one of my many hobbies. I enjoy the outdoors, physical fitness, and everything else. So here I am. I owe you all some live streams. I also will be eventually getting to developing my own Substack subscription newsletter. Probably going to charge only like $5 per newsletter. I don't want to charge anything too expensive. Let me know what you think of that idea. I know I mentioned it in my last set of live streams. So let me know what you think of the $5 a month, where I develop some monthly newsletters or develop a couple essays, maybe a month at most, where I talk about some of these issues of the day. Of course, I'll be continuing this YouTube program, this YouTube channel, naturally. So I was looking through the congressional record, and I found a very, very interesting piece over here. And this is from the publication World Affairs, volume 144, number 2, for the fall of 1981. And it's called Central America and Political Religion. And one of the things I do like to research, topics I like to research, is the aggressive plans of communism and their supporters within the American far left. And what was interesting is over here is there was a discussion about this Nicaraguan Independence Day rally that occurred in San Francisco on July 19th, 1981. And July 19th, that's the anniversary date for the first Sandinista takeover, July 19th, 1979, when Sandinista forces marched into Managua, the capital of Nicaragua. And the author of this article in World Affairs actually attended this celebration in San Francisco in 1981, and apparently attracted 3,000 brigade members from various Latin American groups, as well as Marxists, revolutionary workers, gays, members of the IRA, which is the Irish Republican Army, and that is a terrorist group, the New Jewish Alliance, which is a extreme left Jewish organization, the Palestine Congress, that's a PLO support group that existed back then, and all others wanting the United States out of El Salvador, meaning allowing El Salvador during the 1980s to fall into the hands of the FMLN, which was the name of the coalition of communist terrorist groups working to fight various American-supported Salvadoran governments, whether these sort of semi-fascist, military-dominated governments in El Salvador, or the Christian democratic governments of Jose Napoleon Duarte, which was supported by Presidents Carter and Reagan. Apparently, what caught my eye, according to this article, that some of these leftists, American leftists, even wanted to protect, quote, the frontiers of Cuba and Russia in Central America. So you might think, well, big deal. Who cares? This gives us a bird's eye view of what elements of the where the loyalties, the true loyalties of much of the American far left stands for. Not all of them, but it gives you an idea of what their priorities are and what they're really going after. They want to protect, quote, what they term the leftist attendees, or some of the American leftist attendees at this Independence Day celebration for Nicaragua, rally, the frontiers of Cuba and Russia in Central America. Well, these This is why I call it, they're basically foreign agents. Maybe not legally, but in their hearts and their minds, they're agents of hostile geopolitical powers at the time. And both Russia and Cuba are still hostile governments to the United States and to freedom in Latin America and the United States. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. It's things like this that really turn me off from the left. There really are a couple of things that turn me off from the extreme left. From the tankies, that is the tankies for the most part, and their supporters, and all these people that are so-called anti-imperialists. Number one, they ultimately want to dispose of the entire system of private property. And frankly, you can't do that in the United States. People are going to want to start their own businesses. People have ideas. They want to build themselves up. And if they do that as honestly as possible, that shouldn't be penalized. You're trying to destroy human nature. And you're trying to destroy a core American value. And that's not politically practical, and it's, in my opinion, it's not morally right. Another thing that really ticks me off and repulses me to the American far left is exactly the sentiments expressed at this Nicaraguan Independence Day rally mid-1981 in San Francisco, California, that they want to guard the, quote, the frontiers of Cuba and Russia and Central America. And I'm sorry, that is treason of the heart. If you're trying to guard the frontiers of Cuba and Russia and Central America, meaning the various guerrilla movements in Central America, as well as that time the newly revolutionary communist Nicaragua, that's to the detriment. That's detrimental ultimately to the interests of the continental United States. That's the Red Dawn scenario going right there. And a portion of these unnamed leftists, if this is actually what happened at this Independence Day rally, and I'm sure it did, this is what the sentiments expressed, then they're traitors. As simple as that. You're stabbing the United States in the back. And that's wrong. That is absolutely wrong. Hey, 20th Century Longest. I'm glad you're listening. I think that while the Sandinistas may have been foreign agents, the Contras were no better. They were drug-running thugs. Okay, I'm glad you agree with the Sandinista part. I mean, actually, the Sandinistas were allies of the Russians and the Cubans even during the struggle against the Somoza quasi-fascist populist dictatorship. But they were Marxist-Leninists, so I'm sure you agree with that. But these American leftists are serving basically as agents of a foreign power to bury American interests. The Contras, very complicated issue. The Contras were the subject of disinformation by the Sandinistas, the Cubans, and the Soviets. It was actually the Sandinistas, the Cubans that were more so in cooperation with the Colombian drug cartels, as well as also the dictatorship of the PDF-dominated government in Panama, eventually led by Colonel, later General Manuel Antonio Noriega. Those guys were more involved with the drug trafficking in Central America and into the United States. In fact, several high-ranking Cuban military and high-level Communist Party officials were actually indicted in an American court system for that, for such drug trafficking. And the Sandinistas and the Cubans were getting very unfavorable publicity at the time. Their drug activities were subjected to numerous hearings in the Senate and the House, Paula Hawkins and others from Florida. There's a really good book, 21st Century Longest, called Red Cocaine by Dr. Joseph D. Douglas Jr. He lays out the Sandinista and Cuban complicity in the drug trafficking in Central America and into the United States. And the reasons why the Cubans and the Sandinistas, by their own admission, according to defectors from both Sandinista, Nicaragua, and Cuba, it was really twofold. A, to gain hard currency. B, to blackmail officials in corrupted governments to provide intelligence or enact policies favorable to Cuba and Nicaragua, and also to poison the youth of American imperialism, as to quote a Cuban intelligence defector from what he was told as to why the Cuban and Sandinista drug smuggling operations were implemented. The Contras, I'm not one to whitewash them. They did engage in atrocities too as well, particularly the FDN. There were 2 or 3 major Contra groups. There was the FDN in northern Nicaragua, the ARDE of Eden Pastora, who was a high-ranking Sandinista Defense Ministry official. Eden Pastora, he defected. He was a socialist, but he broke with the Sandinistas because they were going way too much in a totalitarian direction from what he felt, and that the Cubans and other foreign communist advisors were controlling too much in Nicaragua. So he led a battle. And then there was the Misurata, which was a group of the various Nicaraguan indigenous Indian population that also fought against the Sandinistas. Brooklyn Rivera, Stedman Faggith, and others that were fighting against the Sandinistas because the Sandinistas were launching, some would argue, a genocide against the Mosquito, Sumo, and Rama Indians in indigenous peoples in Nicaragua. The Sandinistas used to dress their special operations units of the Ministry of the Interior, controlled by Tomas Borga, who was one of the Sandinista commandants. They were trained by the East Germans starting in 1981, these units. They dressed up as Contras, and they were told to commit atrocities against Sandinista officials and pro-Sandinista organizations to make the Contras, particularly the FDN, look bad. That's something that the Soviets did, the Red Army, during the Russian Civil War. The Red Army soldiers would dress up as Greens, meaning anarchists, and they would kill Russian peasants and then blame the anarchists as well as the volunteer army, also known as the Whites. The Nazis did that too as well. They dressed up as Polish soldiers, and they made it look like that the Polish soldiers were then told to, these special SS units were then told to attack various German border installations, and then they were blamed. And then, of course, they gave the Nazis the pretext to invade Poland because of supposed Polish aggression. So this kind of sneaky, clever means of doing battle to make your enemy look bad is a very old trick, and it's used by some of the more unsavory powers. Okay, thanks. What was the author's name again? Dr. Joseph D. Douglas Jr. I know you might not like this other source. The CIA did a report on this where they traced the, it was declassified. It was formerly, I think, a classified study on the origins of the CIA drug running operation thing. And it was found that various Western European, Cuban, and Sandinista press organs were spreading this idea that the Contras were involved in drug smuggling, and that was initiated in communist sources. Another source that was very big with the whole Sandinista the Contra drug smuggling was also a guy by the name of Daniel Sheehan. And he founded an organization, an institute called the Christic Institute, and supposedly they had close ties to the Sandinista embassy. There's also a book by Susan L.M. Huck. She is a conservative, but apparently she wrote a fundraiser of the Christic Institute. I think she said in the book she attended it and as a journalist, and there was all kinds of various communist supporters and all kinds of other stuff going on there. So in the Christic Institute, Daniel Sheehan was also involved with the Quixote Center, which also funneled financial assistance to the Sandinistas. So really some questionable sources there. Really, when you take a look at communist disinformation operations, the Contra drug smuggling story really has the hallmarks of that, because the Sandinistas and the Cubans were getting horrible press at the time and during a good chunk of the 1980s for their drug smuggling operations. So what communist government dictatorships and other totalitarian dictatorships tend to do is they blame their enemies for exactly what they, the communist totalitarians, are actually doing. And it's another thing why I absolutely despise the communists with all my fiber. Even though you and me, 21st century longest, we might agree with their critiques of American society for what it's become. We don't like their tactics at that, and we don't like their ultimate final product for the American people. So yeah, again, 21st century longest. The name of the book is Red Cocaine by Dr. Joseph D. Douglas Jr. Real good scholar. I actually corresponded with him before he passed away. So he was the one who kind of got me into writing. He kind of suggested some people to start, providing my writings to. Alrighty, so that pretty much ends this stream. I think I'm going to end my streams for now because I got to get ready for my interview with Tina Trent, and I'll try and put out some more products. I still have 2 more items I want to talk about, and then there's a bunch of items I'm reading on my phone right now, some news items related to the Buffalo shooter and Elon Musk. And I want to talk about the baby formula issue with Abbott Laboratories as a failure of shareholder valued capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to y'all later. Have a great day and God bless.